I post this video of him and say, "Thanks, Gary Vee. I'm a huge fan. This is for you." And within minutes, I get a response from him that says,
"This is the freestyle way."
Be live just like that.
"Awesome.
Tim Smith, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Carl, thanks for having me, man. I'm a big fan, and I love what you do. I love the message that you bring to the world. So thank you so much for having me. I'm honored."
It's a pleasure. I mean, we met through Wesley Knight. I
Right.
think we were both following him, and I was doing some collaborations with him, and we connected, and we stayed in touch a little bit online. And you did something amazing for me and for my family, which was that beautiful portrait of my daughter,
Right.
which was so awesome and really special. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I was happy to do it. Absolutely.
Yeah. What a gift. So cool. Well, I'm excited to talk to you because we haven't talked in person or
Right.
on the phone or anything. So this is the first time that we're speaking. It's pretty cool that the internet can do that.
Yeah, long time coming, right?
Yeah,
Definitely.
seriously. Well, the listeners right now are maybe wondering who's Tim Smith. Who is Tim Smith?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an artist based in South Jersey. I've been doing art for about 8 years. I always was an artist, but then I kind of stopped after high school. And then I picked it back up, and I'll get back into that. But I'm also, a husband. My wife and I have 3 children. I'm a father. I'm a creator, and I'm also a teacher. So recently I went full time as an artist, but once a teacher, always a teacher. And I find myself constantly looking for new opportunities to keep students with me in the studio, because I love to teach and I love art. So now I'm kind of combining both of those and trying to find my way and kind of build that journey as well.
Wow.
But yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think going full time as an artist is a big deal. I think any creative, when they make it their full time job, so to speak, that can serve as a resource to support them, seems to be a pretty big step. How
It
did you
is.
know? How did you know that you were ready to go full time?
Well, I don't think you ever really know. Um, I'll say this: I knew once I really started to get into art, like 7 or 8 years back, I knew that it was a goal of mine, to become full time. At first I didn't know how realistic it would be. And then once I started to gain some momentum and have a lot of, at least local success, and people were asking me for work, I said to myself, oh, this could be a reality maybe one day. And I gave myself kind of like a time limit, not necessarily knowing if it would happen or not, but I tried to follow this like 5 year kind of, wasn't even really much of a plan, but just a timeline saying, okay, well, I'll see where I'm at in 5 years. Now, I had always told my wife, maybe one day I'll become a full-time artist. I'll give it a shot, and I really felt like I had to take the leap eventually. And the real turning point, I would say, for me was when my wife went from, yeah, you can do that if you'd like. She's always been very supportive, but she went from you can to one day she said, I think you should. There's a
Wow.
big difference, right? You can, she always has my back. You should, she's saying, yeah, do it. Now's the time, right? So I was getting to a point as a teacher, if there's any teachers listening to this, you're constantly bogged down and overwhelmed and have so much going on at all times. So I would be working all day and then come home with the family, and then I wouldn't get to start my art until sometimes 9 o'clock at night. And I was getting to a point where I had to say no to a lot of work that I wanted to do that I thought could help me build my brand and help me grow as an artist. So I decided last year just to take the leap. And I knew, worst comes to worst, I can always go back to be a teacher again. So yeah, I decided I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the leap. And knock on wood, it's been great so far. It's definitely a grind, but I love every second of it. So
Amazing.
yeah, so it's been awesome, and I'm very blessed and lucky to have such a great support system here. So yeah, it's been an adventure so far, to say the least.
Hmm. Yeah, it sounds like an adventure. And you said that you started 8 years ago. Uh, what does that mean to start? Were you painting or drawing before that, or did you start actually producing pieces that you were selling 8 years ago?
It's funny. So I'm going to rewind before that, if it's okay. I'm going to tell you kind of my
Hmm.
like my story coming up. Um, I always loved art. Even since I was a little kid, my older brother was an amazing artist. I was always drawing whatever he was drawing. So I always had him to look up to. My uncle, who married my aunt when I was like 3 years old, is like a South Jersey amazing, like local famous artist. He's had shows all over the world. So he's on a whole different level. But I grew up seeing such amazing art, like stuff that's in a gallery. So I kind of had a good idea of what great art was, at least in my mind. Um, but when I was little, if you asked me in kindergarten what I wanted to be when I grew up, the answer was probably either a professional baseball player or an artist. But as you grow up, they had the age old saying, the starving artist, right? How are you going to survive as an artist? Um, and so it was like, okay, I loved it, thought it was a hobby. That's great. I was okay with that. So I played baseball, football my entire life and played baseball in college. But when I was little, unfortunately, I had some tough injuries as a young child. So I had my first knee surgery when I was 11 years old,
Wow.
and then another one 2 years later, my ACL, and then 10th grade, my ACL. So I had a lot of time, usually at the beginning of a football season, where I was laid up for a while and was never really in the video games. So what I did was I picked up a sketchbook, and I really felt like drawing at the time kind of healed me in a way. It gave me something while all my friends were out on the field and I couldn't be with them. It gave me something that I was working on, and would see some sort of improvement a little bit at a time. I look at some of my sketches from when I was younger and they're laughable, um, but it kind of got me really into it. So, and in high school, I took art lessons. I had a great art teacher and I loved it. But that was it. After high school, I was kind of done. Um, when I went to college, I actually, my freshman year, I had to take one elective. So I took drawing 101, but I was playing baseball at the time. And my baseball was taking up a lot of the time. And drawing was, like I said, it was an elective and I was going for teaching. So I was like, oh, I don't know if I have time to do all this. So regretfully, the one class I ever dropped in college was drawing.
Oh
Ironically
man.
enough, I know. So fast forward, here I am. I guess, yeah, about 8 years ago. It was 2015. I broke my foot, and I was so embarrassed since I was on crutches as a child all the time. People around my town would say, "Oh, what happened this time? What happened this time?" And it was like embarrassing for me, right? So now I'm 27, something like that, and I broke my foot and I'm on crutches again, and I was so humiliated. I didn't want to go around and see the same people and say, "Oh, there's Tim Smith again, hurt." So I kind of stayed inside for a couple weeks, and it made me pick up a sketchbook for the first time in probably since maybe a little bit in college, but mostly since high school.
Wow.
And when I did that, I started drawing again. And it was about a month before my son was born. And I was like, wow. I looked down and 4 hours had gone by and I had drawn this sketch and it wasn't terrible. And I was like, wow, that was like meditation for me. It felt so good for me mentally that the next day I did another one. And then I did another one. And I just kept kind of sketching. Um, and then I remember telling my wife one time sitting in my house, I said, you know, I've seen these artists on Instagram. I think I'm going to make an Instagram art and I want to become an artist. And she's like, okay, very supportive as well. Okay, great, cool, So I kind of started putting my sketches on. And if you go back all the way, like to the beginning of my Instagram, it has these sketches that are not very good. But at the time, I was pumped about them. So it was just the beginning. And I keep them there for that reason because I love to see the growth. Um, so I did that. And then somebody at my school that I taught with saw my Instagram one day. I wasn't really telling many people. I was kind of worried about what people would think, like, Tim wants to be an artist now, like out of nowhere. Um, and someone saw it on Instagram and said, "Hey, is this your stuff?" I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Would you be able to draw a picture of my son for me, and I'll pay you?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, somebody wants to actually buy my art, like wants to pay me money." And at the time, I had no idea what to charge somebody. It probably took me 5 hours, and I think I probably got like $35 for my first ever commission. But I was pumped, you know what I mean? Like my art was going out into the world. Somebody was seeing it and somebody appreciated kind of like a talent that I had. It made me feel a little bit special. So I was like, wow, this is great. So that person that I taught with showed another teacher and she says, "Can you do one of my daughters?" And I'm like, absolutely. Yeah, let's do it. Right. And since that time, I want to say it was probably October or November of 2015. I've been so lucky that I've never had a time that I didn't have probably 3 or 4 commissions going on for people, like a
Wow.
list. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's just been incredible so far, and I'm so lucky that I broke my foot. Right? I felt like it was kind of meant to be that
Hmm.
this happened to me in this serendipitous way, and it put me here. Now I'm giving my dream a shot. So what more could you ask for?
Yeah, it's incredible. It's really inspiring to hear. And, some of the things that I saw from you early on, and I guess this was maybe 2016, 17, around then when we first connected, was just, art pieces that maybe Wesley Knight had. I think it was Jordan.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Oh, he had who's the sprinter? Oh my gosh.
The
Yeah.
sprinter. That's right. The sprinter. And I was like, oh, there's somebody who's doing like athletic art. That was my first impression. I thought you were an athletic artist or something
Right.
like that. That was my sense. And then I saw that you did something for Gary Vee, I believe,
Yes.
and
Hmm.
you got to meet him. How did you get to that point? Did he commission that? Did you make it and present it to him? How did that
Yeah.
happen?
So along this journey, right, I've always been a fan of people that can help you become a better person, help you grow. So I started watching all these daily V's, and I loved Gary V, and I'm a big fan of him. And then one day, I believe it was on Twitter. So pause. Sorry, I started doing a painting of him, a time lapse portrait of me, the whole process of everything. And I had planned on, tagging him on Instagram. Hopefully he would see it. But one day I remember seeing notification Gary V posted on Twitter. If you're trying to get in touch with me, see me on Twitter. Or maybe it was on Instagram. He wrote that. Right. So I was just about finished this painting, the video and everything. It just so happened it was just perfect timing. He says that. I hop right on Twitter. I post this video of him and say, "Thanks, Gary Vee. I'm a huge fan. This is for you." And within minutes, I get a response from him that says, "Wow." And he tags his assistant, Tyler. And Tyler responds, "Tim, we would love to have you up, or what's your email address?" Right. And then emailed me and said, "We would love to have you sit down with Gary for 20 minutes in New York." And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is like huge for me. Like, I could not believe this was actually happening. Right. Just one of those signs from the universe that, hey, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I remember it was months in advance. So I think I waited probably 5 or 6 months, and I took a personal day from my school, which was hard to do in my district. But the funny thing was, I took it. It was supposed to be on a Friday, and then I got a call like the day of the meeting with Gary Vee. And it was like, we have to postpone until Monday. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I called my principal and I'm like, yeah, this is a huge opportunity. And he was so cool about it. He's like, absolutely, come in. You could do it on Monday. So it just worked out, and I was very lucky. But I actually ended up doing a Curtis Martin painting for Gary Vee. So this is all, free as a thank you, just to get up there and, learn from him and be in his studio and see everything. I mean, what an amazing experience. I mean, you're a fan of Gary Vee, I know that. And just to be up there and learn from him and ask him questions for 20 minutes was well worth it. So,
Very cool. Very cool. And what did you learn from him?
I mean, endless things. I believe at the time, one of the biggest takeaways was just to keep time lapsing every single thing about my art. More, I wanted to build a connection with my audience, right? I didn't want them just to buy my art. I wanted them to invest in me as an artist and really build an audience that I could connect with. And that helps build a brand in the same way. You know what I mean? I don't want them necessarily saying, oh, look at the cool picture on the wall. I want them to say, oh, wow, that's a Tim Smith. So that was a big part. And I was never very business savvy or marketing savvy. And not that I am yet, but when I started learning so much by watching his videos and listening to him, that kind of really stuck with me. So those were some of the big takeaways. I mean, I've learned countless things from him over the years, but and also this is how I met Wes Knight. I think that same day, Gary in my meeting or whatever started following me, and then I was on his daily V, and I believe Wes saw that and started following me as well. So I took Gary's advice. I saw Wes, and I knew that he was kind of like an influencer and was building things on Instagram, kind of like in the same space that I wanted to be in, or at least the people that I wanted to be working with and talking with. So I messaged him. I say, hey, my name's Tim Smith. I was just on the Gary V Daily V, and he gave me some advice to reach out to some influencers and maybe see if they would like some work. And I did that. And that was that painting that you saw. And then from there, I was with Wes in that class that you were teaching in. And that's kind of how we started communicating back and forth as well. So it's kind of crazy how things happen like that.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I love hearing the timeline. Now it makes sense in my head how we connected and how the dots kind of lined up. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really cool. And something that I was just thinking about as you were talking about people recognizing your paintings as, oh, look, that's a Tim Smith, is this idea of having a signature style.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you've arrived at a place where you have a signature style? I mean, me watching you, I feel like you do have a signature style, but I have noticed that lately, maybe in the last 2 years, you made a lot of changes and you've tried different mediums. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're like painting shoes,
Yep.
and just recently you were painting a landscape, which I think it was maybe the shore or
Yeah.
something, and it seems like it was a throwback to your childhood. I may be misinterpreting that, but
No,
yeah.
you're 100% right. You actually kind of nailed it. When I was little, I was always drawing either athletes or the beach or like surfing of some sort, right? Because I live close to the beach. So it's always been a big part of me. But to go back to the question about, do I feel like I have a signature style? I feel like I'm close, but I feel like it's always evolving, right? So I loved to do portraits, and I love doing big. I love working big. I love vibrant colors. However, it is difficult sometimes to sell a 4 foot by 4 foot picture of Marilyn Monroe or Jimi Hendrix, and I believe that I love doing it. I want to continue to do that. But I feel like right now, in order to help me keep this dream alive, I kind of pivoted a little bit to do more things that locally would get my name into some galleries, some restaurants, into people's, living rooms or whatever would help me sell just to keep going. And even the shoes, that's kind of how it's nice to be able to do some quick work and get paid for it, right? Rather than work on a piece for a few weeks and not know if I'm going to be able to pay my mortgage until that one goes. You know what I mean? So um, I started out as a portrait artist doing these big, colorful things. And I feel like that really helped me get my name out there and on the map. And I love that. And like I said, I'm going to continue to do that. But just not temporarily, but I feel like I just added some more things to my repertoire. So it's kind of, I don't want to be pigeonholed as a giant portrait artist. I want to be able to do a lot of things, And I feel like with each thing that I learn or add to my art, new opportunities arise too. So it's all about keeping the door open and whatever's going to keep me in the studio painting and living my, the life that I'm hoping to create. So that's really
Mm.
where it comes from. But
I really like that. Yeah, I really like that idea of your art matching the lifestyle that you're trying to create for yourself, as it's something that resonates with me because I believe that whatever body of work we're developing is just an extension of the life that we envision that we could be
oh,
living.
absolutely,
So
absolutely, I
it's cool to
completely
hear.
agree
It's
with you.
cool to hear that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Uh, well, I'll tell you this. This was I wasn't sure I was going to share this, but it makes sense right now to share. Is that one of the things that your art has done in terms of a gift to me? Is that now when my grandson sees the
Hmm.
picture of my daughter on the wall, he goes, "Mommy," and he wants to give it a little bump, and he
Oh,
goes,
that's
"Mom."
awesome.
Yeah, so it's special, and at the moment, we don't have that piece in this house that we're currently living in. It's currently in Central California, and it's there in my in laws' house at the moment, in the room that we were staying in during the pandemic,
Mm.
because we were in the process of moving to Sweden.
Oh,
So
right, right.
we had sold everything, and we only saved a few things that
Mhm.
fit in one little room, and one of those things was your piece of art,
Oh, I'm
that
honored.
painting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's a very special piece, and every time we go there, I'm like, we need to bring it back, we need to bring it back, we need to bring it back. But for now, anytime we go there and our grandson is with us, he's kind of like, "Oh, mommy,
Right.
bump," and
That's
it's a gift. So yeah, know that the art that you're creating and the intention that you're putting into it is being received on the other end as something meaningful, and it's an extension of our family. So it's a
mhm.
very, very cool. I love that, and I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate the nice words as well. That's one of the best things, and it's very rewarding for me to hear people and to see people love what I'm putting out into the world for them. You know what I mean? So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, here's maybe a challenging question, and it's something that I believe is important because everybody on Instagram seems to have it made, right?
Mm.
It's like they've done it. During the
Right.
holidays, we were just talking like, "Oh, where are all the happy people?" Well, they're on Instagram, and everybody everybody's killing it
It's
there.
perfect. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but I know that for you, you are currently in the process of becoming the potential artist that you are,
Hmm.
and so you're trending in this growth. And I'm curious, at this point in time, just kind of looking back, what have been the big inflection points that have led you to this place of now having the confidence to say, okay, it's time to go? It been collaborations, a certain amount of money, a certain amount of attention that you've garnished? Is it just a skill set that you feel like, oh, I can just put out art like crazy right now, or I have a clear path as to where I'm going and now I can execute on that plan? Yeah, what are those inflection points, and how do you know that you should be doing this right now? What are the indicators?
I mean, it's such a good question, and it's a very difficult question to answer. And I feel like it's probably a lot of everything you just mentioned. For me, I've noticed a lot of like little signs along the way. Just Whether it's somebody's reaction or somebody calls me and tells me what the art has done for them, that kind of just makes me believe like this is what I am supposed to be doing. I want to be doing something special. For instance, I had surprised a friend of mine just with a little print, and she was going through something, and it was a print of Bono from U2, a painting that I did, and she's a big U2 fan, and it was just random. Like I didn't know what she was going through at the time, um, and she calls me one day, and she had been kind of questioning. It was a relationship problem she was having, whether she should stay, whether she should go, kind of thing. And I wrote a little note and gave it to a friend of mine to give to her that I knew she would see. So, and it was just kind of like a surprise. And I said, "Hope all is well. Miss you." And then I just put quote unquote "walk on" because that was one of the things I titled from Bono, right? A U2 song. And I get a call from her later that day. "You have no idea what this painting did for me." She said, "I've been going back and forth. Should I stay? Should I go?" And she took it as a sign. And she was so happy with everything that she's been going through. Like, I just happened to do this thing. It says "walk on," right? Um, so that's like a little serendipitous thing that really made me feel like, okay, like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Um, there have been other similar instances where one of my friends tells me to use my art, or says that I do use my art as a superpower, which makes me feel great because it's not all necessarily about the money. I'm trying to bring the best out of people and share my gift with them. And if they're going through a hard time, whatever can make them happy. So that's one thing that tells me I'm doing the right thing. Another instance is like these opportunities that I keep getting, to be on here with you, to meet Gary V, to meet Wes, right? Recently, this past summer, I was on ABC Action News. They did a little story. Um, I had a couple of like Bryce Harper commented on a picture of him that I did. So like all these little things, I'm thinking if I didn't break my foot, if I didn't get hurt, I would never have picked up the sketchbook again. I wouldn't have done that. The way I got hurt, I broke my foot. It was something so dumb. But now that I think about it, I'm like, I was supposed to. This is exactly how it was supposed to unfold for me. So all these little things kind of pushed me into this path. And I firmly believe I'm going the right way that I'm supposed to be going. Um,
Nice.
so and like you said, well, because of all these opportunities, I've had some small success on Instagram. You know what I mean? So it's nice to get some great feedback, and social media, and it's just been unbelievable. And I hope it continues to go that way. You know what I mean? I definitely believe that I'm kind of a yes man in a way, as when it comes to new opportunities, I like to keep doors open and see what comes from them. So I think that's also a part of it. I'm always trying new things. Even recently, I did some window painting at my kid's school, and then something comes from that. Like somebody else reaches out, "Could you do that for our school? Could you do this for a company, or a restaurant or whatever?" Sure. Whatever's going to keep me creative, whatever's going to keep me happy, I'm going to keep doing it. So.
Hmm. Yeah. Very interesting and very, very cool that you feel like you are tapping into those little subtle signs, like,
Mhm.
a friend saying, "Hey, you don't know how much this means to me." Because some people are maybe like, "Oh, yeah, I just got a piece commissioned and it's going to be 100 grand." That was the sign, right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's definitely not that yet. I can tell you that.
right, but maybe it's coming. You never know.
Right.
That's very cool. And something that caught my attention was, what were you teaching, by the way? What grade were you teaching?
So I taught at the lower level, like the primary school level, and I was a basic skills teacher, kindergarten, first, and second. So I had just small groups of students with me, and then I would push into other classrooms as well, but mostly reading.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. I was curious because I saw the time lapses of you doing those pieces on the chalkboard. And I
Hmm.
thought those pieces were really cool, and I assumed those were for your classroom.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, how did the kids like that, and
Oh
what
my
did the
gosh.
teachers say?
That was the kids love it. That was great. They would look forward to coming into my class every day. And sometimes I would leave my door open for because some of the kids wanted to see the progress on whatever I was working on that day. So that was a lot of fun, and I got a lot of great feedback from teachers, from students. Um, I was actually one of the highlights of, like I said, I was lucky enough to be on the Action News, and they asked me about those. Um, so that was kind of a cool little niche to break into, and I still do a little bit of chalkboard art even in my studio. So it's been good, and I actually would love to do more, and I probably will branch out and still do more as soon as I kind of get some things finished that I have on my list to do. I would love to keep doing that stuff, but it was just a great way to keep the kids intrigued,
Hmm.
to give them something to look forward to when they came into my classroom. You know what I mean? And they love seeing the process, and they loved asking questions. So many people were like, weren't you worried kids were going to like swipe it with their finger? And tell you the truth, kids are kids, right? If they did that, no big deal. I'll put more chalk on it. What are you going to do? But
Hmm.
they really, they appreciated it, and they knew, not even, I didn't even have to say anything. Don't go, they didn't even touch it. So yeah, that was really cool. Hmm.
Amazing that kids can see something like that and appreciate the value of it. And it's also cool that you would dedicate so much time to putting up a piece that was chalk on a chalkboard that could just disappear at any given point of time. I mean, somebody could get it, come in and clean and be like, "Oh, this is just from the day," you know.
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
maybe they knew that you were doing something special there. How long would those pieces last? Was it like one a week or?
I mean, I tried to do a few. So right in the beginning, the first one I did actually was just like a cover of the book that we were reading in the class, just because I thought the kids would like it. And then what happened was the Super Bowl was coming along. I was like, oh, it was like a big thing in our school, and I was like, I'm going to do a cool Super Bowl mural, and they loved it. And the rest of the school was like, wow, that turned out so cool. And it was all right, but then at the beginning of baseball season, when there was the strike and everything, and I'm a big baseball fan, I was like, oh, I would love to make something like that, just to. And all of my students were starting to play like t-ball and stuff like that. So I thought it would be fun for them to see the process throughout, like maybe a couple weeks. I would do it on my lunch break, or like a couple minutes during my prep time. So it was a whole process. It probably took me maybe 2 weeks to complete the whole thing. But that was a good lesson in itself for students, to see not everything is done in 15 minutes or an hour. I know a lot of my students, when I teach art lessons, and when they come to my studio and they're like, all right, well, I'm done. I'm like, oh, let's see if we could keep bringing some more out of it. But to see a process happen, not like to not finish something in one sitting over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, maybe, was eye opening for them to see what kind of work goes into it.
Mm.
So that was awesome. The kids loved it. The school loved it. It was a lot of fun for me, and it was a different way to really express my art, or to show my art, I should say. Chalk is, not necessarily easy. It smears a lot, but it was really cool to try to perfect it. And I love the fact that they were able to see the bad parts of it. You know, Talk about Instagram and everybody's happy and perfect, right? One of the things that I kind of pride myself in is showing the imperfections. I want the people that see my videos to know it's not always easy. Like, the beginning process is a struggle, and you have to get through that hard part. Just like in life, you struggle, you get through it, you're stronger for it. Painting is very similar in that when you get to a hard part, you got to get through it, and then the rewards come after, because you could kind of see the big picture, and you see the rewards, right? um so yeah, I don't know where I went with that, but it kind of rambled off a little bit. So
No, we were
um
just kind of talking about a little bit of how the kids were appreciating your process, and that in your process, one of the things that you are kind of highlighting right now that I think is important is that it takes time to create a masterpiece,
right,
right?
yeah.
And sometimes you don't know if you're even creating a masterpiece. And something that I've heard my mother say a lot, she's an artist, is, "Oh, I shouldn't have touched that."
Mhm.
I shouldn't have messed with it.
Mhm.
It was actually perfect the way it was. Have you encountered that before where you had a product and you're like, "Ah, I feel like there's something more," and then you went to do it and you kind of messed it up? And how you dealt with that? What is that like? Is that
So
something that you recognize in yourself?
it's funny because I've always said, as a painter, I love painting because if you make a mistake, you could paint right over it. Um, I don't feel like I don't feel like that. I don't really get that sense like, oh, I shouldn't have touched it. I just feel like I'm kind of improving it a little bit at a time, one brush stroke at a time, one pencil stroke at a time, and I'm trying to make it a little bit better. If I did something I should have done, erase it, no big deal, right? Um, but that's what I always loved about painting was there really weren't any mistakes. You just cover it up and you keep going and you build from there, right? It's a whole entire process, and trust the process and you keep going, you get through that hard part. They talk about there's something called like the artist, forget what it's called exactly. It's like a reverse bell curve basically. When you start a new piece and you're all excited and you're like, wow, this is going to be awesome, you're up here, right, you're all fired up, and then all of a sudden you start to say, okay, well, this is the hard part, it's okay, it's all right, and then you're at this bottom part where you're like, ugh, not so good. This is where a lot of people stop and they're saying, oh, I'll get rid of it, I'll start a new one, or they just never finish it. This is the hard part for a creator, to get through that hard part, right? And once they do and they start to say, okay, there it is, that's what I was picturing, or there it's coming out now, right? And then by the end of it, you're like, there it is, done. That's what I had envisioned from the beginning. But it's hard. That's what you know makes people different. It's what separates artists, right? If you could get through that hard part to see the finished product.
Yeah, that's huge. Right now, what are the main challenges that you're facing in terms of being a full time artist and growing as an artist and your business, which is the machine that allows you to expand? Are you facing any resistance at the moment, or anything that's um, that you're trying to solve that you're tinkering with?
Well, it's interesting, as a teacher, I had a safe gig. I had a paycheck coming in every 2 weeks, right? So anything that I was making from my art was a bonus. And now it's like I'm noticing and I'm learning. There was definitely a learning curve coming into it where, and I expected that there would be some challenges like this. I'm really focusing on what my time is worth. And I'm noticing maybe some things that I've done in the past that were fine when I had a safe paycheck coming in probably might not be worth my time now unless I double the price, or because I have to make a quota pretty much so I could pay my mortgage, so that we could buy groceries and do all the bills. And I also want to get to a point where I'm comfortable and then I don't have to do as many commissions, or I could start to just branch out and do more originals or more chalkboard or just strictly YouTube or videos or anything like that. But it's been a challenge because all of my time, I'm constantly thinking, okay, if I do this right now, is it going to be worth it for me? And I don't necessarily, I don't want to be so financially like focused. I want to be art focused, but I feel like I have to find that happy medium where I'm doing both. So that's kind of been a challenge that I'm working through and learning a little bit more each day, and getting better at it. Definitely. In the beginning, I'm like, okay, what should I do now? Should I do this? Should I do that? And now it's like, okay, I have to do this today, get it done by tomorrow, so that whatever I'm getting paid for actually makes sense and is worth it. Um, so I'm always learning, and I think
Hmm.
as a creator, as an artist, as a business owner, you have to be always learning. Otherwise, you're going to be at a standstill, and you're not going to grow at all. So, um, yeah, that's definitely been a challenge, but one that I'm working on and I'm getting better at. So I welcome it.
Yeah, makes sense. So do you cap yourself in terms of your time management at a place where you say, okay, this is what I'm going to dedicate to commissions, and then this other time allocation is going to be dedicated to the creative side, which is maybe who knows, just exploring new avenues or creating content that you're sharing with the world. Is there a deliberate practice around that, or is it as it comes right now?
Right now, it's mostly as it comes. However, I will say that I try to get my commissions done first so that I can get to the things I can pay my bills, and I can then get to the things that I want to experiment with and help grow my business a little bit more. Um, I have been better at saying, okay, this piece, if someone asked me to do a commission piece for them, I would say this piece is going to be that this much, and I'm definitely better at giving myself a window of time that makes that price worth it, you know. So like I said, always a learning curve, but it's been good, a challenge I welcome, and I'd rather be doing this, you know, and designing my own life and in charge of my own life and everything that comes to me. So yeah.
Makes sense. How do you price your art? Is it even something you want to talk about? But I'm curious.
So there's a bunch of schools of thought on that. A lot of people do value based pricing, which is what I would ideally hope to get to, where you think about a piece that might be worth something to somebody throughout their whole life and what it should be worth. A lot of people do time, how much time they think it's going to go into it. A lot of people do by size, you know, size and time. So I do mostly like how much time I think is going to go into it at this point. Um, it just makes the most sense to me. So but it's always changing. Each year, you know, luckily I've been lucky that my prices are going up a little bit more each year because I'm so busy. So it's kind of like supply and demand from that aspect. You know, you kind of got to do it, and I got to do it to get this lifestyle and keep this life that I have going. So when I was teaching and I had the paychecks coming in, I would say, oh, you know, there's some wiggle room. But now it's been good because I kind of say, I'm sorry, this is the best I could do, and here's why: I have kids to feed, you know. So I don't feel
Mhm.
bad about that anymore.
Right, right. No, that's great. That's great. Do you have any goals that are more kind of superficial in terms of, oh, I would like to be featured in on a certain podcast, or I would like to do a collaboration with Samsung, or is there anything like that in your mind, or is that just a byproduct of you doing the things that you love?
I think it's more of a byproduct. Of course, I would welcome if anybody's listening from Samsung, feel free to reach out. You know, I would love to do that stuff. And I do imagine myself one day, you know, doing some traveling and really embracing the great life that art could give you. Um, but right now, it's kind of a byproduct. I want to just put the work in, do my thing, and see what comes of it.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I would love to do some big things. Right now, nothing specific comes to mind as far as like working with a company or a specific artist. Um, Really, for the next year, I'm going to work on getting my stuff out there. Restaurants, galleries, some solo shows, things like that. Working on building my YouTube channel, my website, my client list, things like that. Those are the main
Hmm.
things that I'm focusing on this year for 2023, at least. You know,
That's beautiful. And in terms of teaching, you were teaching in school, of course, but now are you still teaching art? Is this something that you do on a regular? And what age groups do you teach, and who is your clientele?
so yes, I do still teach. I was teaching reading in school, but because I never went to school for art, but I have for the last 5 years about I've been giving private art lessons. Um, and I work with kindergarten students all the way up through high school. I even have a couple adults that come to me. So that's been awesome. And like I said earlier, like once a teacher, always a teacher. And I feel like that's kind of, you know, we talk about the ikigai, right? That was one of the first things that you taught me. And I feel like that is kind of um, like my wheelhouse, teaching art now, putting my passions together. And I love teaching lessons, and I love teaching other artists to help grow their, not just their art skills, but their business as well. I feel like I've kind of figured it out. Well, I'm figuring it out, I should say. I haven't figured it out, but I'm going and figuring it out each day a little bit more and a little bit more. And I love all aspects of teaching, not just the skills, but whether it's growing your business or getting better at something. So,
Hmm.
mhm.
That's great. And in going forward, how are you planning to continue to showcase your art and to be seen? I think that's one of the hardest things that artists face is really being seen, and then uh, adding enough value through what they're presenting that people want to work with them. Do you have a strategy for that? And if so, what is that?
That's a good question. And I don't know if I definitely have the answer. I'm really trying to be seen on different platforms, right? So I want to grow my YouTube, and I want to be seen as an artist, but also as an educator. I want to get my stuff out. I'm starting locally, right? But hopefully, somewhere throughout the next few years, I could grow and have my stuff throughout the whole country. Like I don't want to limit it, but I want to be able to start where I think it's manageable and get my things, whether it's prints or originals, out to the world, um, just like that. And going back to social media, I think that's a big thing for me, just to keep growing my social media page to get seen. Um, so yeah, I would say those are the big things for me right now to continue to grow and get seen. Um, I would love to continue to try and get some more shows, group shows, solo shows, anything like that as well.
Hmm. Yeah, makes sense. This is a question that is for me now. It's I for example, I get pretty tired of social media, and one of the things that I dread is if I get stuck in scrolling through social media, I start becoming very judgmental of how generic a lot of the content is after a
Hmm.
while. Like everybody is doing the same thing, and then I get annoyed because I notice that I'm doing the same thing
I
too.
know. I do the same thing.
Right, and then I'm like, oh man, I'm complaining or judging this, and I'm the same way. What's your relationship like with social media as an artist, and how do you navigate that?
Very similar. It's a love hate thing for me too. I don't want to spend my time scrolling. Although when I'm scrolling, sometimes I find some new ideas, right? And then I'm like, oh, maybe I could do my version of that. So there's that positive aspect of it. But then again, just like you say, I find myself doing the same thing, and I say, okay, well, I guess if this is trending, this is what I should be doing, right? Should I make a reel using this sound because that's got the little arrow and it'll help get me the most attention? But it's kind of a balance, trying to stay true to yourself and trying to build your audience at the same time. It's really hard to do that. And I don't want to necessarily be like all silly and goofy by doing these little reels or anything like that. That's not really me. So I'm going to stay true to myself as much as I can. Also, while showing a little bit of my personality, but nothing crazy. Um, but I mean, reels have been great for me in the sense that they're getting me new followers and attention and views and everything like that. But when you see the same reels with the same sounds, and I guess it's like, is it my turn? Do I need to do that now? I don't like thinking that way.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've jumped onto a couple of trends, just a few, and it's funny because every time I jump onto a trend, I almost feel I don't even know how to describe it, but I'm like, here I am just
Mhm.
being influenced, and I'm being a follower now of the herd. But every time I do it, I seem to get a lot of positive attention,
I
and
know.
the dichotomy of that is just it's challenging
It is.
to
It is.
navigate. So I was just curious how you felt about it as an artist who is I believe an artist is somebody who is truly curious about exploring originality
Hmm.
and
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you nurture originality with all the information that we're bombarded with all day long? We're so influenced. How do you do that?
Well, I think part of that is just by being authentic, right? And doing what you're into, and not doing something just because somebody else got a lot of attention from it, right? So going back to where I started doing a lot of like beachscapes and waves and things like that, that's a part of me. I grew up at the beach. So finding your style in something that you love is a huge part of being original. And like I said, so showing your imperfections, right? I spent my whole life trying to master or become an expert at making something look like a person or exactly what I was trying to draw. But now that I'm older and I've um, done a lot more art, I find my favorite parts of the pieces are the imperfections and what is might be a little bit odd about a piece. You know what I mean? Whether it's the wrong colors or um, like a slight paint drip that wasn't supposed to. Like Bob Ross talks about those happy accidents all the time. It's amazing how many artists feel like that. That the things that separate them are the things that are technically wrong with a piece. You know. But that's to me, that's what makes it original. I see a lot of artists these days, and to each their own. I'm not gonna put somebody down for it, but a lot of them, feel like it's okay to, it's up to them. Use projectors and then paint in the lines. But to me, that's not authentic. That's not how I choose to do it. If you would like to do that, that's fine. But I feel like if I'm going to be asking for money from someone, I want it to be as real and as authentic and original as possible. You know,
Hmm. Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. You said the projector thing. I actually used to do that myself if I painted anything on canvas. And the reason I did it was because when my mother first started painting, she was probably late 30s, early 40s.
Hmm.
She started just doing oil painting to as a hobby, and she was doing copies of
Hmm.
famous oil
Okay.
painters.
Right.
Yeah, and she became very good at doing these copies to the point where they looked at least to the untrained eye very close to the originals. And she started selling these. She got commissioned to do these, and that was my first awareness of how art was created. So I thought, oh, that's how you do art. You just copy paste. But something that came up over the years was watching my mom evolve from those copy oil paintings to her originals, to different mediums, to using different materials, and to now having her own unique style. In her mid 70s, and to see that evolution over 30 years or whatever, 35 years, is very cool. And something that comes up for me is that it takes a long time to
Hmm.
become original
Right.
and to create your own style. And I'm wondering, do you ever have moments where you doubt yourself and you think, for what? I mean, there's all these artists out there. Why me? Why should I be special?
Uh, yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster. Um, there are times when there's sometimes when I don't have the vision right away. I know it'll come out eventually, but when I'm painting something, it's a strange thing. It's almost like you forgot what you did in the past to get this result, you know. And that's why I feel like you just got to keep going and get through that hard part of that bell curve, like we were talking about, and it kind of brings itself out to find the originality, right? To find the authenticity and make it your own. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I mean, countless times I've doubted myself, but I like to think of myself for the most part as a positive person. And I try to spin that thought if I am doubting myself to turn it positive and get through that hard part.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
So, would you say you're an optimist?
yeah, definitely. I try to always stay positive and be as optimistic as I can. And I believe when you do that, the good things happen, right? So almost
It seems
like,
to be working for you.
yeah, hopefully it keeps going, right? But there's definitely times like right after I resigned from teaching, I would wake up in the middle of the night and say, oh my gosh, I have 3 young kids. I just quit my job, right? What am I going to do? And I knew I had a list of commissions that I had to get done for people. I knew there was money, but it's just, there's always that little inkling in the back of your head, right? And you have to get rid of it and just say, trust it, keep going, have faith, keep going. And I'm big on like positive affirmations as well, right? So put it out into the universe, it'll come back at you.
Yeah, I like to say create and attract, create and
Yeah,
attract. So it's kind of if I think I've set this example for you before, but if you're a photographer and you want to be featured on the cover of some magazine or whatever, it's not about chasing the cover of the magazine, but rather just producing the best work that you can in your photography so that you one day become noticed and invited to produce the cover of a magazine. It's kind of
exactly.
like that.
And then going back to what you said about like some goals, do I have any like big goals about doing something with some? I feel like it's going to be a byproduct of my hard work that gets me to those big things that happen, you know? So um, it all, you know, it's full circle. It all comes back and it's all intertwined. But yeah,
Hmm.
positivity is a
Yeah,
big part of the way I try to think and act, you know, especially
that
as a
makes sense.
father of 3. I want them to see, you know, I want to be a good example for them, and I want them to see like always stay positive and good things happen, you know.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Have you explored a digital expression of your art? Is this something that you mess around on an iPad or on a tablet and just
I
draw
have an
around?
iPad. I mostly use my iPad just when I'm doing lessons. I don't really do digital art because I'm kind of an old school paper and pencil, canvas and paint. And to me, that's the authentic part for me. And listen, the iPad's unbelievable, right? It's amazing. But to me, I just like to go back to the basics, and that's just my preference. You know, I know there's a lot of unbelievable digital artists. My brother is an unbelievable graphic designer. You know, but to me, that's never been me. I just like the movement. I like the feeling, the texture, all the all the things that come with the old school style of painting and drawing. Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, and so in terms of digital, do you think there is will be a time where your physical art lives in digital form? I mean, NFTs are although the market is down, it's still something that people are talking about. Yeah, what's your sentiment around that?
I mean, I think NFTs are a great idea. At first, I really didn't quite understand them, but as you know, the last year and a half have gone by, I've seen what they could do for people, and it's more of like at first I thought it was really about the picture and the art, but it really doesn't have as much to do with that as I thought. It's more about the exclusivity that comes with it, right? And if you belong to a group. So I haven't really figured that whole part about NFTs yet or anything like that. And so yeah, I think eventually it could happen. You know, I know there's definitely a future for NFTs, and it's just going to continue to new things are going to happen, like the AI and everything like that. Um, but right now, I mean, I have like digital prints and everything like that on my website, and you could get prints, canvas prints, anything like that. Um, like it's not just originals, is what I'm trying to say. For me, I do have copies and things like that. But
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think NFTs it's a very interesting space. I've kind of dabbled in it, and one of the things that I've learned is that basically an NFT is a ticket into a service, a group, um, an
mm-hmm.
idea, even. And in the future, it will be much more than what we see at this
Yes,
moment. It will be an airplane ticket. It will be booking a room. It will be
right.
buying a house, even a unique,
And I'm
original
no expert, so I
property.
feel like I don't have any room to talk about it. You know what I mean? But you're right, absolutely
Totally.
right. Yeah, it's just the beginning phases of it.
Yeah, but the art itself is a great indicator of what's potentially on the other side, and
Hmm.
it can communicate a message as to what it is that you're getting yourself into. Plus, it's very attractive, and it serves as a way of expressing a philosophy. So, basically, branding.
Right.
Branding is very
Yeah.
strong.
Hmm.
Do you think about your own branding, your personal brand, and if so, what's the philosophy behind a Tim Smith?
Well, I want people to be able to see the work that goes into it by looking at a painting of mine. I want there to be rough, quick brush strokes, right? Very loose, very free. And I want them to know, I want my story to be embedded in my art, right? This guy that took a risk, kind of left his safe job, and this is his story, and this is a piece, and this is his passion. And you could see it all in the painting by my, whatever it is, my colors, my movements, the imperfections, things like that. So I want that to be a part of my brand. I know I want to stand for that. Um, so I still have a long way to go as far as like um, building that part into it, but I feel like it's starting to get there, and people are starting to really get my story and what I put into my art. So
Mm, mm. What do your kids think about your art?
I mean, they love it. They think it's the coolest thing in the world to have an art studio that they could just come in and paint with me and mess up the walls and everything like that. I always just tell them, I'm like, you know how lucky you are just to be able to come in and make a mess somewhere. But it's super cool. I love having them. That's one of my favorite times in the studio is having my kids in there painting with me, blasting music, just having a great time. So it's awesome. And they enjoy it. They're all creative in their own ways as well. My little guy's only 2, but he loves making a mess. So
Yeah, my grandson is the same way. He is very messy, but
yeah.
he's amazing, full of energy, and it's amazing to see when a toddler like that starts to create. I mean, we try to only do crayons,
Hmm.
but he's
Right.
managed to get some permanent markers and worked on our furniture. And sometimes you look at the lines, you're like, whoa, those are pretty cool lines.
Yeah. I
Like
actually had an instance last year. Was it last year? Yes. A teacher, when I was still in school, came up to me. It was my son's teacher. My kids went to school with me. And she came up to me and she said, his name's Oliver. We call him Ollie. She said, Ollie drew on the wall at school. And I'm like, okay, thinking to myself, how do I have this conversation with him that he's not allowed to draw on the walls when all I do is make a huge mess on the walls? And I say, okay, all right, Ali, we're going to keep that for the studio. Okay, we don't do that any other walls, but in the art studio, it's okay.
right,
But
right.
it's great to have them at such a young age realize there's this great way to express themselves, and it's okay to make a mess, and it's okay to find their own creativity. I don't, one of the things that I tell a lot of my students and my children, I don't want to see yours look just like mine. I want to see what looks like yours and what makes yours special, and that's hard for a lot of kids that want to make it perfect, but um, nothing's perfect anywhere. So it's great to have this area for them to explore and build and grow.
Yeah, this idea of imperfection, I think, is so powerful because, I mean, whether it's our relationship to our body and our appearance, the way that our lives are going, there's never a moment where you say, "Oh, wow, everything is in my cookie cutter mind
Mhm.
perfect." It's always in flux, and there's always something that feels a little chaotic or is about to you fall in or out of balance. And I believe that's the nature of life, and being able to express that in a way that is beautiful, like through art, I think is really powerful. And if if our imperfections are truly perfect, that's what perfection is, the imperfections of ourselves and our lives. What does that feel like for you? What's the emotional relationship to that?
Hmm. Well, the imperfections to me have been my kind of like my driving force. It's been motivational for me. Um, like I said, I spent my whole art career trying to make things perfect and look just like something. And it wasn't until I felt like I had the experience that I realized the importance of them. That's what gives us the authenticity and originality and the beauty, right? And then to talk about how that's like life, exactly. That's life in a nutshell, right? The imperfections. That's what makes you you. And so, yeah, that, I mean, I feel like it's a good thing almost in a way. I've tried to spin it in a positive light. I think about when I was younger and I didn't understand why I was getting hurt. Nobody else was getting hurt. Why I had 4 knee surgeries by the time I was 17. Then in college, I had both shoulder. And then the big picture, right? All these little things that to me at the time were negatives, they're really the imperfections that kind of built me and taught me these lessons and forced me into this career that I'm having in a way. I didn't see it at the time, but there was a bigger picture. And those imperfections got me there.
Tim, I think this is how we end it. I think that, because I think that's I think that's the message. That the message is exactly what you just shared, is that these things that seem like inconveniences
Mm-hmm.
or the wrong path, or you're in a position where you're like, why me? Why am I in this shithole? And
Right.
all of a sudden not knowing what to do with it, and I don't feel like somebody else, is actually not something that's putting you in the dark, but it's actually bringing you to the
Yeah,
surface and shedding light. And
exactly. Exactly.
yeah, I really appreciate that. So yeah, thank you for sharing, Tim. Is there anything I can do, we can do to support you? Where do we find you? How do we connect with you? How do we commission a piece?
Oh, yeah, feel free. So, anytime you want to reach out for a commission piece or if you have questions about an original that I might have on my website, feel free. You could go on my website, www.theartworkoftimsmith.com. Please feel free to follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I am at Tim Smith Art on Instagram, and I answer my DMs all the time and love to connect with fans and the audience that and followers. So I try to have a good relationship with my followers, and I think that's a big part of what we go back to saying, building that connection. So, Carl, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been great, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much.
This is the freestyle way.